Hi, this is Andrew Bohnet. I'm currently in the UK, and I thought I'd talk a little bit about innovation in tax technology. I actually think innovation in tax technology doesn't really necessarily exist. Certainly not for a lot of companies out there. There's been a lot of investment recently, and I was at a conference. It was actually last year. I was at a conference where the particular vendor was talking about how they innovate a lot using AI and everything else. And actually, when I looked at what they were doing, I think the one thing they had managed to start working on was very basic, and pretty much everything else they wanted to do was they want to do it. They hadn't achieved it yet. And a lot of this, again, is around the use of AI as well. But there's two fundamental problems currently. I think actually it's three. I think when you look at a lot of the people in tax technology, certainly for the startup companies, you've got people that are leading product design. Not all. There's some great people out there, but I've seen some people where, like 2 years previously, they were flipping burgers, right? They don't have the experience, yet now they're leading a product design team, or they're responsible for product design. And so when it comes to tax technology, tax is very unique. You can't just get a bunch of developers to build a tax solution. You have to have people who are doing the development who actually know what they're doing and have an understanding around tax, because it's different to other development. So that's the first thing, is there's a lot of people, I think, who may be inexperienced leading sort of product development, primarily because there's not enough people in the industry that have that experience. The other problem is most of the bigger players, not all, but a lot of the bigger players, they have grown by acquisition, and they are trying to take products that they bought and then they're trying to stitch them together, which is usually done using API. So you end up with a situation where it may look like there's one platform, but actually behind the scenes there's loads of different systems and they're hanging together, and quite often the structure and the way the data is held, it isn't great. And we often see little flaws when we're doing implementations where you can see where they haven't quite designed a certain product in the right way, because you know that product was bought and then connected. Now, a lot of the companies, certainly the ones that we work with, are doing their best to standardize the data, but not all do, right? And then the problem with that is then when it comes to the ability to make everything work, quite often you're limited by the requirement to get that proof of concept out to market and to get things working. I think that's another problem as well, is a lot of these companies that have sent startups, they have money, they've got deadlines, they've got to meet certain criteria. We were helping, or were asked to help a company, and it was to do actually with the invoicing. And when we were talking to their lead developer about the proof of concept they wanted to create, I asked them, I said, so how are you going to define the country that you're going to connect to the tax authority? So with that transaction, how do you know which tax authority to connect to? And they said, oh, we're just going to take the country of the legal entity. I questioned that. I said, what happens if they are registered for more than one country? If you're a lot of companies, they have multiple tax registrations. And the response was, oh, don't worry about that. It's just a proof of concept. Straight away, there was no way I could work with that company, because it's never a proof of concept when it comes to tax. And I think that's one of the other problems we're seeing, is that you'll have products that are being built and the developers who are building them don't necessarily have that tax experience, or the pressure that they have to just get something onto the market because of the investment that they've received means that a lot of the solutions being built aren't necessarily optimal. They're basically built to get the proof of concept out there. And as we all know, as soon as you have a proof of concept, as soon as a client buys that is now your solution. And then you end up trying to fix stuff back end all the time. And I think the other thing as well is that when it comes to market research, most tax teams will ask the tax people. When it comes to market research, most companies will ask tax teams, so they think that's their target audience. So they will do the market research and set up questions, speak to people within the industry. But the problem is that tax teams, they have no innovation. So you're asking people that are literally stuck in a bubble. And the reason for that is, one, as I mentioned on other podcasts, is tax teams are legally responsible for filing data they have no control over, right? So they never own the data they work with. So the only tools that they can work with are reporting and compliance tools. That means they are very limited. They find an issue, it's very rare that they can go and actually get that issue fixed. They have to work with the rest of the business to get that issue fixed. For example, if I'm a payables manager and I have a problem with being able to pay my suppliers, I'll make sure I get that fixed because I can't do my job without having that problem fixed. So I will own that issue and get it fixed. If I'm a tax manager and we need correct VAT registration numbers on the suppliers, I have to go to the payables manager. And those VAT numbers don't normally have any impact on the payables manager's role of being able to meet their job requirements, right? So it's never normally a priority for the payables manager. So that means the tax manager is always playing catch up. They're always having to chase. Hopefully you have a good relationship and you get things sorted out, but ultimately it means that the tax teams are always chasing. So that means that they are caught in this bubble, really, where the majority of the work they do is all about just reporting. It's looking at data they have, it's providing obvious advice to the rest of the business, but it's working with the data that they have, and they're always, in effect, fighting a battle to get better quality data and to make sure processes are being followed. And that's if they have the visibility to see that data. So what you now have is a situation where if you're asking a team, what do you want to see from an innovation point of view, they're only going to ask for better reporting and better compliance because that's all they know. It's in the same way that if you were to ask for a resume from someone and they gave it to you in Excel, you'd be like, why have you given me a resume in Excel? And if that's the only tool they know how to use, that's the only way they're going to know how to give you a resume, right? So when it comes to that market research, when it comes to trying to improve products, and you're asking the teams that you ultimately sell those products to, they don't have the answers because they don't have the ability to innovate and to make things, fix things, and to improve things. So that is another fundamental challenge, is that, and this is one of the reasons why I think there is a lack of innovation quite often within the tax world, is because the tax teams only know what they know. Of course, there's always exceptions. I work with some great people that really have some great forward-thinking ideas, but generally, when it comes to the tax side of things, most tax teams, everything's around the reporting and the compliance, and they don't understand what is really necessarily needed to get things fixed at a deeper level. So when it then comes to the innovation of the tax technology companies that we see popping up, and let's face it, most of them are just trying to jump on the invoicing bandwagon, or they're claiming lots of AI use. And I'll be talking about AI in another podcast series shortly. But ultimately, we see very little innovation. It's the same products just being recreated. And so therefore, currently, with all the money being pumped into tax technology at the moment, the amount of innovation that we see is all based around what already exists. No one's actually taken that step to fundamentally change things. Not everyone, because that's something that we do. That's why we're called Innovate Tax after all.